Good afternoon, class. My name is Sean Walker. This is my PowerPoint presentation regarding researching professional standards. Okay. So, basic introduction. So, professional standards is exactly what the name suggests. And professional standards are guidelines. It's a set of a roadmap for teachers and educators to follow to provide high quality education to our prospective students. So it's designed to help teachers ensure that we're providing like high quality instructions. We also want those guidelines to be standardized. So as we move as teachers from, let's say, California to Texas, or from Texas to Florida, that we still demonstrate that same high quality standards across the globe, and anywhere we go, that students are receiving the same high qualities. A part of that is the INTAC. INTAC is the Interstate Teachers Assessment and Support Consortium Standards. INTAC, INTASC. So that's the baseline standards. And so those standards, again, is your core standards of how teachers are to conduct themselves in the classroom, the standards that we use, the model in which we teach, so that we provide high quality standards, to high quality education experience to our students. So a part of INTAC is basically, I created this pyramid to kind of better explain it. So you have a learning environment. So the learning environment, it's basically safe, it's inclusive, it's effective teaching mechanism for us to actively engage our students. Now, with that learning environment, we're going to hone in a little bit on content knowledge. So the more that I know the content, the more that I am able to, so for instance, if I'm an English teacher, the more I have if I have a control of the English language, then I'm able to demonstrate that information to students. The more I know, the easier it is. So that's where the content knowledge comes in. So as instructors, we have a general baseline of how we're going to treat the classroom, which is an excellent, great, inclusive environment, and then the component of us knowing the knowledge. Now, the next step to that is learning differentials. So learning differences is basically, there's a great environment for learning. B, we have a control over the content. C, now we take that content and we're now presenting it to the students, but we're also being very cognizant of each student's unique background, their strengths, their interests, things that they adhere to in the classroom. And so along with that learning differentials, we kind of determine that by assessments. So some of the assessments that we'll provide is to understand how a student learns. Are they a visual learner? Are they a hands-on learner? Are they a standoff and a self-driven student? So the assessments are there to help figure out what is best way to educate those students. And lastly is the learner development. And basically that helps us to grow and develop. So we're basically taking that and learning creative ways that we can use to apply the knowledge to our students. And so it's basically broken down into those different categories, from your overall learning experience to content knowledge, basically understanding the information. Then it goes down to identifying the students' strengths and weaknesses, and then it's the application of that. It's basically now understanding the students' strengths, how I'm going to play to that to better educate them. Okay. So SPA is one of the standards that's specifically for students of, I believe it's special education. So those are the students that are for not special education. Those are the students for childhood education, K through 12, higher learners, and specialized vocalized training. So basically, you got the INTAC standards, which is general across the board. Most other standards are going to have elements of the in-text standards, if not all of those. And then SPA is standards specifically for like childhood education or K through 12 education, which is a little bit more specialized than the overall standard. So that's SPA. The next one we have that we spoke about is ATEF, Active, which is American Council on the Teaching of a Foreign Language, and exactly what the name expressed. So this is for the standards that we teach students that are from another country or maybe speak a different language. And so not only do they include the intact, but it's also specialized to students that speak a different language. Obviously it started as a nonprofit, and the role is to just standardize the guidelines for language instructions, like how to conducting research and advocate for the importance of language learners in a globalized world. Key functions of Active is proficiency guidelines is widely recognized as basically like a framework of assessing language proficiency levels. So if you have a student that's like Spanish speaker or French or Creole, ATAC standards would come into play as far as educating those type of students. You got the NPBEA, which is the National Policy Board of Education Administration, and exactly what it sounds like. So not only do the teachers, the educators have standards, but the principals and leadership staff have a standard. So their standards are one to create an inclusive environment, just like Intact, but with the NPBEA, their main objective is for instructional leadership, community engagement, and ethical decision making. Everything that I said sounds as if, it's going to gear towards the professionals that's leading the schools, leading our teachers. The NPBEA is a standard that helps those leaders make decisions. The NASP, which is the National Association of School Psychologists, is exactly what it sounds like. It's the standards for psychologists in the educational field. So their standards is to basically ensure that they're providing like a comprehensive and evidence-based service to support students. So we don't want psychologists to come in and just give their feelings of what they're examining or just pull from thin air. They have literally a set of standards to look at and to guide them. And the same thing as all the other standards, it's state to state. So the same psychologist in California should come to a similar, if given the same set of circumstances, and another psychologist, let's say in New York, they should come to a similar balance, because both standards are national standards in psychology, and so they're basically just evidence-based. The NCSS, National Council for Social Studies, same thing. So their standards is to discuss the biggest standards for them is that it provides resources, guidance, professional development, and opportunities to educators in different areas. So it's essential for just engagement in social studies, focusing on citizenship, focusing on diverse perspectives. So NCSS is for the social studies national standards. The NCTE was the National Council of Teachers of English. Same thing. I mean, it's literally just the standards for English language arts teachers. So this is more so the writing and reading fundamentals. So it's not linguistics, but it's more reading and writing. Now, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, National Association of Music Educators, same thing. One is for the music and one is for mathematics, pretty much self-explanatory. TESOL is it's teachers of English speakers of other languages. So this is more what I was speaking about with the NCTE, whereas NCTE is more so about setting the standards for the physical reading and writing of the language. TESOL is the educational part, the linguistic part, how to say how to say the framework in which how to proficiently say the correct words and syllables within a language. So they're kissing cousins in a way, but now the TESOL is more so about the language itself. And so their language proficiency and their framework is just about the lesson itself. Now, Intech and SPA, they are similar, but they differ in two different ways. Where Intech is a set of 10 standards. It's more focused on the learner and learning, the content knowledge, instructional practices, and professional responsibility. Where SPA, which is the special education, like I say, the K through 12, that's more the foundations of special education, instructional strategies, and assessments and evaluation. So they're more geared on evaluation, because in order to determine if a student, and they're also set on 8 standards versus the 10, but also to determine where a learner needs a specific help or not, there's assessments that's going to take place, and then those assessments need to be evaluated. So the SPA deals with that more. So the Intech is just 10 flat standards of how we should conduct ourselves. The standards are all data-driven, instructional decision-making. So it's all basically just getting in the information, data-driven, what's been taken as far as the assessment is concerned, and then divvy out how we teach our students. Intech does focus on the emphasis of teachers assuming the responsibility of practicing the practices for our students. The standards state that we should be able to reflect on their practices and identify areas for improvement and take action to improve their teaching. That's the Intech standard. I'm going to conclude by comparing and contrasting Intech and the NCTE, which is National Council for Teachers of English. So Intech is your basic standard, is your basic guideline or rubric of how we should garner ourselves as educators. NCTE are both common skills. They're both the same as far as knowledge, skills, and requirements, but the NTC is just going to focus more on teaching of the English, teaching of the literacy as far as the reading and the writing, where the Intech is your general standard. And so those are the differences between those two. And as a future teacher, I definitely want to utilize both the NCTE and also Intech, but more especially Intech in my classroom setting, because it's the general standard. Once you get those general standards down, it's easy to maneuver and change around the other standards that's specific to the major I'm teaching. Thank you so much. And I'm going to conclude the presentation. Thank you again.